Welcome to your weekend. I'm Mike Krause, editor-in-chief at CompleteColorado.com, filling in for John Caldera, who is sweating it out at Disney World in August. He should be back shortly. A little bit later, we're going to talk about Proposition CC and transportation spending. But first, we're going to do something completely self-indulgent and talk about CompleteColorado.com. So I brought the whole CompleteColorado.com newsroom to the table. Sherrie, Peif, how are you? Thanks
Great.
for coming.
Thanks, Mike, for having me.
And Scott Weiser. Scott,
good to be here.
Thanks. And this is the whole Complete Colorado. We do several things. So we aggregate news from around the state, and then we also publish a lot of political commentary and opinion. But we also do original reporting, and this is the original reporting team at the table right here. And so we want to talk about that a little bit because it's just such a great part of what we do, I think, and makes Complete Colorado just a little bit more unique than it otherwise would be. And but first, you spent a long time as a reporter at the Greeley Tribune, right?
I did, almost 15 years.
15 years
Almost
at
15
a print
years.
newspaper.
At a print newspaper.
Wow, it's one of those things where you actually...
During that time when
you
people
flip through
actually
papers?
flip through it. Yes, exactly, yeah.
And you did some time at print at the Boulder Weekly,
Boulder
right?
Weekly,
And what did you
yeah.
do at the Boulder Weekly?
I was an associate editor and a writer. I worked with Wayne Laugesen, who now is the opinion editor at the Gazette. We worked up there for a couple of years.
It's hard to believe that a couple guys like you would have been editing at the Boulder Weekly. It
was kind of remarkable.
And I say that because you and Wayne would be much more free market, much more libertarian leaning than you might expect from some people who run a alternative weekly.
Yeah.
I don't know, why does Boulder need an alternative weekly? Isn't the whole damn town alternative?
Well, that's why it's not an alternative weekly. It's just a regular weekly.
All right, so both experienced at writing about politics, daily newspaper, alternative weekly, plus you also did some opinion writing at the Gazette.
I did.
Right. And what I wanted to talk about was what it's like doing reporting at Complete, because we don't do daily reporting. So you don't have to go chase a story on a daily basis. You don't go report on every press conference that might happen. And we're also not doing Dog Bites Man, or the Peach Blossom Festival runs through June, that kind of thing. And so a lot of what we do is investigative or investigative-ish in nature, because we'll take the time to do Quora requests, take the time to call people, et cetera. And so talk about your experience reporting for Complete. And you're actually, both of you do dual duty covering the Capitol,
Right.
but you're the Southern Colorado Bureau
Right,
reporter.
I am the whole Southern Colorado.
Whole Southern
Bureau.
Colorado.
Got the whole southern part of the state. Yeah, it's been a challenge a little bit transitioning from the Boulder Weekly and opinion writing to hard news writing, but I really enjoy it. Just being able to get the facts and tell the facts neutrally and accurately is something that's sorely lacking these days in our news media. And the ability to have the opportunity to do that is really wonderful. The kind of hard news stuff we look at are, let's start with the Shields sporting goods store in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, okay, let's set that up just a little bit, because let's talk about that. So you did several pieces on this deal with Shields in a business improvement district in Colorado Springs.
Correct.
Right. And so tell us about it, and then tell us what finally happened. Because my understanding was this was a done deal until Complete Colorado broke a story.
Well, it was supposed to be a done deal.
Okay.
Shields got a $16 million tax rebate from the city of Colorado Springs to bring their store here. And the Business Improvement District, which is the board of the Business Improvement District, is the owners of the property. And after the $16 million tax rebate, I was doing what I usually do and perusing the city council agendas, and I noticed that they were bringing up an issue to exclude the Shields building from the Business Improvement District, which would mean that it would not have to pay the same property tax and public improvement fee taxes as all of the rest of the merchants in that Business Improvement District. And that raised my hackles because I'm pretty big on fundamental fairness. And as a result of writing the article about the fact that they were just doing that, a couple of the other merchants in the Business Improvement District contacted their representative, and he ended up bringing this to the attention of the city council. And the city council said, wait a second, why are we going to exclude the store from the Business Improvement District? Is that treating everybody fairly? And they actually set up a meeting where the developers were supposed to come in and explain it, because they hadn't told anybody else. And they withdrew the application as a result of that. And while we don't know what's going to happen in the future, it didn't slip through the cracks. And that's the value of this kind of reporting, is we have the time to look through city council agendas and pick and choose our stories.
Right. Yeah, and picking and choosing stories, you're not obligated to go chase something down. For the day, we're not going to print at 5 o'clock, so you don't have to have something in there. Let's bring it over here. What's been the difference between writing for Complete and being over at the Tribune?
I think almost kind of the exact opposite from Scott was because writing at the Tribune was that daily constant deadline. I was having to do, 5, 6, 7, sometimes 10 stories a week. I was just having to push stories out, get them out there, get them in print, and try and making sure that they were, just the story. Whereas when I came over to Complete, I now have the freedom to do more investigation, decide what I write about, and look at a different perspective from the pieces and take because we embrace the fact that we're right of center, and we get to take that right of center perspective sometimes in our stories, the perspective that is not always out there, the perspective that's not generally in the daily news media that's out there. So it took some getting used to for me to not have to put out 10 stories a week, not have to,
I'm going to make a note of this. I did not know you were capable of putting out 10 stories a week. So, Sherrie.
Those will be more of the dog bite and
those are the dog. But no, I know
blossom,
those are dog bite man stories,
Yeah.
or the Peach Blossom Festival
Right.
runs through June, and those
Exactly.
they're quick. And you just got to crank them out because you're on a daily deadline.
Right, exactly.
Right. Okay. You've also been doing, Scott talked about, the Shields thing that he took up. You've also kind of taken up a thing that you've repeated over and over again. This has been this municipal broadband story.
Right.
Talk about the municipal broadband stories up in northern Colorado you've done.
And that started with Next Light in Longmont. When we came into the municipal broadband, I'll call it a beat, Next Light was already up and running and Longmont was good to go. And all of a sudden you started seeing all these other little communities across Colorado pop up with the idea that they were going to do municipal broadband. So when I started looking into it, there seemed to be one side of the story being told. And that one side of the story was the side that was coming out from all the cities and all the towns that wanted to do it. There wasn't the side of maybe what could happen if this doesn't fly like it's supposed to. So I started meeting with some people and started talking to some people and found out that there was a side of this story that really needed to be told, and that is that it's not necessarily peaches and cream or rose blossoms, and so I started looking into the Loveland story, which many residents, believe it or not, in Loveland were not aware that Loveland bonded almost $100 million to do their broadband without taking it to the taxpayers, because they could, because of a loophole in the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. They bonded $100 million. Well, that set off all the other communities, and so now we've looked at Fort Collins, and currently I'm working on Greeley, because Greeley looks to be one of the first communities in Colorado to not only offer municipal broadband, but also television and voice as well.
Wow.
And there's so much intricacy to it, but the stories have led to pushback among consumers within Greeley and some other communities, because they are now starting to recognize the true risk that may lie there with the city taking on the major bulk of this.
Interesting. Yeah, you talked about, we were joking about you being the whole Southern Colorado News Bureau, which is actually true. But we're not, the great thing about being, and again, this goes back to being digital, we're not, and you're the Northern Colorado News Bureau, but we're not tied to geographic region within the state. The entire state of Colorado is technically your beat. Mm-hmm. And you've ended up in some interesting places covering stories, right?
Yeah.
And you were just up in Basalt?
I was up in Basalt researching a taxpayer bill of rights issue in Basalt, where Basalt discovered that it had been illegally floating their mill levy rate up and down over 25 years. It never went above the cap that was originally set in 1994, but it went down from about 6% down to 2% as they tried to properly fiscally manage their town and save taxpayers money. But then it started to inch up again, and they were just told when they got their new financial people were getting ready to do the budget for 2019, they were told that that was illegal, that they could not raise the mill levy rate back up without a vote of the public. So Basalt is getting ready to issue checks to every resident of Basalt for $900 to $1,000 to repay almost $2 million in wrongfully collected taxes. Now, the really interesting thing is that rather than try and find that money in their own budget by moving stuff around and asking to do so from some other funds, the present plan is that they're going to lease back do a sale and lease back of some city property, possibly including the town hall, and then pay $280,000 a year in interest on that loan. That's still working its way through the process, but they will have a ballot issue in November to fund this refund.
Here's kind of the interesting thing about Complete is that the local papers up there in the Basalt Aspen area did some reporting on this, but Complete gave it a statewide audience to a localized issue, which is interesting. And you've done that before, where you've taken a pretty localized issue and ended up giving it a statewide audience. Talk about that.
A lot of that comes out of Weld County, and
Yep.
that is one of my major hot spots right now, and that was with Senate Bill 181 and Proposition 112. Both of those, Weld County was very, very much pushed back against, and Weld County and their organization or the development of their own Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission type department has almost been the tipping point of that. But my coverage of Weld County has gone viral when it comes to the state. Sometimes it amazes me. I can do a small little story on a video setup in Weld County, and it gets more hits than a story that's about Metro Denver. So my coverage of Weld County has gone viral statewide as far as that goes.
Interesting. The other part about being a digital operation is, of course, that your offices wherever you happen to be at the moment. This is an interesting thing that there was a time when you would have been tied to a newsroom because the phones were tied to the wall, et cetera, and that is simply no longer the case. Is that freeing, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I did the Basalt story at the end of my vacation because I just happened to be there.
Right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And excuse me, I recently went to a conference in Washington, D.C., where I was able to go to the conference, but at the same time, I was still able to do my work because I had my laptop and my telephone with me. Likewise, I'm getting ready to go to Lincoln, Nebraska to do some investigation into something on a story that I'm working on, and I will still be able to, while I'm in Lincoln, not devote my entire time to that one story, but still be able to do the other stories that I'm working on as well. So it's actually very much...
I think it's very liberating and freeing myself, too. Mm-hmm. And so, look, we're out of time. Thanks for coming in. Everybody, don't forget to check into CompleteColorado.com. Thanks, Sherrie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Check out their bylines, and we'll be right back.